My name is Adam Kaswiner. I go by Chef Kaz, as you can see on the shirt. This little guy, we call him the Castronaut. Space traveling ninja, astronaut, scientist, chef from the future. That's unofficial, okay? My title is I am a performance chef and culinary nutrition expert. My background, well, it's pretty, as you mentioned when we were talking before this call, it's pretty diverse. But specific to the culinary world, I've been cooking since I was a little kid. I went on after high school to get my biology degree from Emory University. I traveled for about 5 years all over the world after that. And then I went back to school for my culinary degree at the Culinary Institute of America. And my first job out of culinary school moved me out to Las Vegas. It was more of a desk office sort of job, which wasn't really, I'm not really that kind of, I'm sitting at my desk now, but it wasn't really what I wanted to be doing 8 hours a day. And so I decided to start my own business. And that was about 10 years ago now. And I had been working for myself for the last 10 years. I work with some of the top guys in UFC, Major League Baseball, basketball, football, all the athletes, but also just like lots of normal people too, families, you know. I get to do a lot of fun things with food, and I really focus on the, not just health, but really like what food can do for us. You know, sometimes we can look at, oh, I just want to eat healthy so I don't have any problems, or, you know, oh, I have a history in my family of, you know, disease or some problems, so I want to avoid it. But really, I look at it from more of a perspective of, you know, when I eat well, when I eat a certain way, I feel great, right? My energy's better, my mind is better. So that's kind of my approach. That's a short little summary, if that works for you.
No, absolutely. So some of these questions I'll read for the kids, and some of them I'll unmute them. But one of the kids was checking out your profile on the World Food Championships website, and they wanted to know, they were talking a bit about your importance with food's function and health and fitness. And there's this misnomer that people think that healthy food is going to taste bad. So
Right.
how are you able to kind of combat that as a professional culinary chef and someone who's passionate about health and fitness?
Yeah, that's, you said misnomer. You know, it's just a little bit older than you guys on this call. When I was maybe your age and healthy food came around, it was boring, right? So my slogan when I started my career was, you know, healthy doesn't have to be boring. And that was because at that time, a lot of nutrition and diet was based on, you know, having not a lot of fat in your diet. When I was like a teenager, like fat was the bad thing. You know, then carbs kind of became the bad thing. And so what people have tried to do is oversimplify, right? They're saying, oh, just don't eat this one thing, and then you can eat, even now, right? Plant-based, vegetarian, vegan diet. You know, you can still be eating lots of garbage in your diet, even if you don't eat meat, right? So I always looked at it like, if I can create food that is exciting, you know, tastes great, but also is good for me, that's the perfect combination. So when I was 14 years old, I was on the wrestling team in high school, and I asked my grandma, I had to, you know, for wrestling, you have to make weight, right? So I asked my grandma, I said, can we make a turkey meat sauce? And keep in mind, guys, when I was 14, that was 1995, probably way before most of you were even alive. I'm dating myself here, right? But that was never something that I saw somewhere. It was just an idea. Like at that time, I started to understand, oh, red meat isn't really super good for you, right? So I said, can we make a turkey meat sauce? And I hung out with my grandma all day, and we made like turkey meat sauce for the next 6 months. So that's where I started to really understand that if I knew what I was doing in the kitchen, I could make food that, like I said, is good for me, was good for me, but also tasted great. Like I wanted to eat it. And what I started to discover was when I went back to eating the other stuff, I noticed a distinct difference in how I felt. I really would feel kind of lousy when I would go back to eating like fast food or something like that. And so I just kind of continue to gravitate in a certain direction. And like I said, this is more and more what I do today.
That's really great. Do you kind of notice that there's like those, you had touched a little bit on the dieting trends and all that kind of stuff where fat's bad, carbs bad. Do you feel like it's cyclical, like, with the Atkins coming back or variants of it coming back?
I think that there's like a more or less a line that people tend to progress. So I gave the example about red meat. Red meat and pork tend to be the first things that people start to say, okay, I know that's not so good for me. Then they eat more like chicken and turkey, we call poultry, right? The white meats. And then they say, oh, well, maybe I should eat less of that and eat more fish. And then they say, okay, well, maybe, the ocean is polluted, and, the way the processes that the fish are being caught and farmed isn't really, the best thing. So maybe I should do plant-based. And it's this continual elimination of things. But even now today, like I said, a lot of people are into a plant-based diet, which I actually follow myself. I don't eat meat. I'll once in a while have fish, and I don't tell anyone that, you should or shouldn't do anything. I just say, try it out. See what works for you. When you're younger, you can also get away with a lot more, right? When you're younger, your body can kind of just, anything you give it, it's going to utilize. But the older you get, as you well know, it doesn't continue to work the same way. So I just encourage people to, one, think about what you're eating, consider it, because a lot of people, when they get introduced to the subject, it's like they never even thought about it before. I was privileged in a way, even though it was kind of a misfortune in my life that I started getting into health and nutrition so young due to some circumstances in my life. But that set the path for me to go into this line of work, to study this, to be passionate about this. And the hardest thing is that there's no perfect diets. People are like, oh, what should I eat? And honestly, I say, eat foods in their original form. Eat things that come out of the ground that look like they came out of the ground. If you're going to eat animals, if you're going to eat meat, try to have the freshest version of it. If you're having a hamburger, make a hamburger yourself instead of going and buying it from McDonald's or something.
That's pretty sound advice. We have a question from Miss Cordoba, who's the kids' virtual teacher. Miss Cordoba, you should be able to unmute to ask your question. That I think it's very pertinent for today's event. Oh, you're still, I'm not sure if your microphone's on.
Sorry, it's my headset is also muted. Hi, Chef Kas, how are you?
Hi, great, thank you.
Pleasure to be here with you. I teach culinary arts to the virtual students as well as at a local high school. And I was wondering what advice you had for students who wanted to pursue a career in culinary.
For advice to pursue a career in culinary, well, the first thing I will tell you very honestly is it's a very hard line of work. Okay, so make sure you love it. How can you make sure you love it? Well, once you get to the age that you're allowed to work, or maybe you have your parents or friends of your parents or somebody, go do a tryout. We call in the culinary industry, we call stage. It means you go and work for free, right? And maybe not for a long time, but just for example, as part of my culinary degree, I worked for 5 months without really getting paid. Okay, they gave me a little bit of money to live off of, but it was not like it was like $300 a month. I was also in Mexico. Okay, so one, make sure that you understand that the work itself isn't like you see on TV, or even the point that I'm at in my career. I get to do a lot of glamorous things. I just worked with the heavyweight champion of the UFC, doing all his food for his last championship fight, but at the same time, there's still things I have to do. And this is going to be true in any career. There's going to be things you have to do you don't really like to do, or you don't really want to do, especially when you own the business, right? You have to kind of wear all the hats. But at the same time, have fun with it. Go in the kitchen with your mom or dad or your grandma and play around and see what area of it, appeals to you. I always thought of cooking as science. I'm a science person. As I said, my bachelor's degree was in biology. So, what find that thing for you. If culinary is something that appeals to you, maybe you're like, oh, I love making pizza, or, I love desserts or something. If you're passionate about it, honestly, that's going to help you overcome a whole lot of other challenges.
It's great advice. And we'll go with a couple more questions, and then we'll let you go. We have a question from one of our students in Venezuela, and she wants to know, what kind of advice do you have for us students who want to eat healthy, as far as like what should they pick in markets and grocery stores and whatever they have available to them?
Yeah, so, I'll be honest with you guys. If you're in South America, you're very lucky, right? Your quality of produce is probably way better than, I live here in the desert in Las Vegas. Don't mind me being in a tank top. It's very hot here. But, we don't really have a lot of natural, we're close to California, so that's good. But I've traveled a lot, and I can tell you that a lot of places that I've lived in the world have better quality fruits and vegetables than here in the US, because here everything is so mass farmed. Right? So look for the stuff that's the freshest. You don't have to like overthink it so much. Lots of fruits and vegetables. We have something here in the States called the food pyramid. I think they changed it now to My Plate. And I can tell you the same information that I was getting about nutrition when I was your age is actually the same thing now. It doesn't matter if you're 14 or you're 40. The facts remain pretty much the same. And you also don't have to put a lot of pressure on yourself, right? If you're like, I want to have a pizza. Okay, have a pizza or have a hamburger. But the thing that I tell all my clients is pay attention to how you feel, right? After you eat something, do you have more energy or do you have less energy? After you eat something, a lot of kids, younger people on this call, I'll tell you guys a big secret. If you have acne, if you have bad skin, I can tell you almost guaranteed it has something to do with your diet. I have a really good friend of mine that I went to high school with that he had really bad skin for a long time, even into his like 20s and 30s. And then he discovered he had a dairy allergy. And as soon as he took out dairy, his skin cleared up. So the body has a way of telling you whether it's how you feel, how you're thinking. If you wake up in the morning and you're always tired, well, what did you eat last night? Right? Try changing that. And I'm not saying, I always tell people, don't think of it as like 100 and 0, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be somewhere in between. But if you treat it like an experiment, I always say I'm the first guinea pig for anything that I share with my clients or anybody else. I try it first with myself. Okay. So I'm not going to say that it's going to work for you, but I can tell you what's worked for me. So when you do that, what I would say is just pay attention, pay attention how you feel. If your stomach is upset, sometimes we feel a certain way and we think it's just random. If you ever heard the expression we say in English, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Well, what does that mean? Do you really think you wake up on the left side, you feel good, you wake up on the right side, you feel bad? That doesn't make any sense, right? You have to be rational. You do A and it produces B. You do C, it produces D. Well, do you want B or D? Right? If you want B, do A. If you want D, do C. And so looking at things like that will really help you in making better food choices, because a lot of how we were kind of brought up in this culture, it was a lot about don't eat that. That's bad for you. I don't say that. Nothing's bad for you. It just has a certain effect. So if you want to produce a different effect, try something else.
That's a really good advice to focus on the feeling as opposed to, the output. I mean, that's the function and the health and the fitness and the whole state of mind. I think it's so interesting what you do. So before we let you go, is there any advice you could give to these kids as they kind of go off into the world and figure out what they want to do? As somebody who's traveled the world, I mean, you've cooked for endless amounts of famous athletes and stuff like that. I mean, the list was huge. But even if they don't want to go into cooking, what kind of advice would you have for them as they kind of pursue their passions?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because even now, I'm 40 and I'm still figuring things out. I'll probably be figuring things out till I'm 100 and beyond. So, if you're like, hey, right now I'm really into video games, or right now I'm really into sports, or right now I'm really into cooking, don't think that you need to figure it all out right off of this one thing. If you do, great. Like I have friends who, when we were kids, they knew what they wanted to do and they've stuck with it, and that was the right thing for them forever. But it's gonna change. So, enjoy it, embrace it, make the most of it. But also remember, whatever you learn in one area can help you in another area. So, what I learn in cooking, I also teach martial arts. So believe it or not, some of the stuff I do in the kitchen, it applies when I do capoeira from Brazil. I heard we have some Brazilian attendees on here, right? And same thing, when I'm in capoeira, it helps me in other areas of my life. So, at least in the American culture, in the US culture, we have a lot of pressure, I feel like. And sometimes when you're a kid, from your parents or you're in a school, you want to know what you're going to do. But sometimes just enjoy the process. I know that maybe sounds cliche a little bit, but I actually think for myself, I do a better job when I don't always put so much pressure on myself, when I just enjoy it, I embrace it, I'm in the moment, I'm just saying, what, win or lose, I'm going to learn something. And, just continue to be on things like this. I mean, I'm impressed when, we didn't have any of this, but when I was a kid, I wasn't always seeking out, people to listen to. So, having a mentor or experts that you say, oh, I want to follow that career path. Maybe not the exact same thing, but some idea. Oh, I like how he's accomplished this type of success that he's accomplished or she's accomplished. I'm going to model that. So those are a couple ideas that I have.